everybody. I'm getting on to do my review. Welcome to another review of the haves and the have-nots. I'm getting on doing my review early this morning so I don't end up pushing it too far out because I got to do laundry today and all that. It's 7:27 a.m. So let's get into it. So Hannah, she's not answering any of Jim's questions and he's ranting and going on. What are you doing with my personal information? First off, it's not even his personal information, it's Catherine's. It's not his house, it's Catherine's. And he just will be doing the most like he has so much. And he we saw in another season that all his money from being a judge, all his pay from that is gone, and he just relies mostly on Catherine. So anyway, so Hannah, he came towards her and she picked up a fireplace poker and she's like, "Come on, cause I'll wear you out. I'll wear you out." And I was here for that because she was ready to fight had she needed to. And she picked up the bag and the laptop and all that, the papers in the laptop, and put it in the bag and was about to leave. He's like, "Don't you take that. Don't you take that. Don't you take that." And Hannah's like, "Pfft." And she's getting ready to leave. She leaves out of the room. And Jim's going to go after her. And David stops him. And in the process, he hurts his arm. And I'm like, good. Jim deserves to be hurt. And so Hannah gets downstairs, and then here comes David, and he's gonna threaten her, and he's like, "I will take that information." And Hannah's like, "You know what? She's like, she picks up a candlestick, and she's like, "Okay, take it from me." And David, he tries to take it, and she whap knocked him in the head, and he said, "Oh, ow, am I bleeding?" And I'm like, he was like, he sounded a little bit whiny there. And I'm like, you're a rather sturdy man, you know. And he's just like towering over this woman and threatening her, and then he's gonna whine when she was basically defending herself. I'm like, David, please. So, um, So over there at Veronica's house, and all I can say, I was not feeling this scene at all. Veronica was just racist in this scene because Celine, she knocked at the door and she just walked in when Veronica opened it. And Veronica was like, she's going on, "This is why your people, you just come across the border and illegally and blah, 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 and all this." And she made Celine leave and come back in. And so Celine, when she came back, she said, "I didn't," Veronica's, "I didn't say come in." She made her leave and come back in again. So Celine is after Veronica finishes playing that whole come back in, go out game, Celine tells her about her job, and she says, "Well, they're trying to get me fired, Jim and David." And she's like, well, you know, if cleaning S in a toilet means, in a hospital toilet or whatever, means so much to you, I will have a talk with them, folks at the hospital. And Veronica is so disrespectful and racist, and in this climate, I'm like, okay, those lines were cutting pretty hard. And Celine, she is, she's reached her wits end. She's at the end of her rope. And she was kind of trying to talk back to Veronica, and Veronica's like, "Are you challenging me?" And so they, so, but Celine did get her her barbs in. She got her barbs in at the end of the conversation. So she was talking in Spanish, and she said, "This is what the, the subtitle said." She said to Veronica, "You are the daughter of a bitch, and you'll end up dying like a dog." So my thinking now, and my mom said this too because we were watching the show together. That my thinking is on this is that that Celine is gonna be the one to take Veronica out because as you can see, she's a person who doesn't have much to lose, and she looks about ready to snap. So I think that Celine will be the one to take Veronica out at the end of the show, the end of the series. So Benny, let's get to Benny. He goes by that stockbroker, and they have a little conversation, and he's like, "Just wanted to see if you were okay," and blah blah blah, all of that. Obviously he's after her, and he being after her means he's gonna end up in another situation with the Malones. So Benny just stays in some kind of trouble. Um, but at this time, it won't really be his fault. I mean, because we'll talk about how crazy Sandy is when we get to that part. Okay, so Hannah, back at the house, she's taking notes. They're in the living room, and Jim's just being real nasty and racist. What are you taking notes about? Blah blah blah. What are you doing? And then David, he's telling him, Jim, you need to stop. You're starting to sound racist. And I'm like, starting to sound? I'm like, Jim has been racist throughout the show. And Jim's like, I'm not worried about offending Hannah. And David's like, I'm not worried about her. I'm offended. And I'm like, David, you're just. I'm like, so David, he's saying he's offended, but he's not worried about Hannah being offended. And I mean, no matter what the situation is, David should be offended that he is disrespecting Hannah. I mean, why is he, Jim is talking to a black woman like that, and David is just like, he's more offended for himself than and because Hannah has done nothing to David. David just like jumped to it for Jim. He's being a little too Rochester for Jim. So Jim is saying he's not a racist. I'm not a racist. And Hannah says, that's what most racists think. I like that line because that needs to be put out there. Most racists do not admit or even believe they are racist. And Jim is like, well, I sleep with anything that moves, so I'm not racist. And I'm like, oh, wow. I'm like, so I mean, Jim just says a lot of things that racists say. Because I've actually heard, people say, oh, well, if a person, is married to a white person married to a person of color, I've heard people say, well, they can't be racist. Their wife is black, their husband is black, blah, 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 whatever. And I'm like, yeah, you really don't understand how racism works, but let's not dwell on that. So Jim continues to mock Hannah, and he tries to stay away from the racist stuff because David said he was offended. So Hannah, she starts breaking down the business lingo. She's talking about profits and losses, and how the companies Jim has had Catherine investing in, how they have had losses every year, um, how how they should have been filing in a certain tax category to offset the losses, all that business jargon. And Jim is like, he doesn't really know what to say because Hannah has got her stuff together. So let's talk about Candace. So over at the hotel room, Benny comes back and he's trying to talk to her about Derek, and she's like, well, I know the circumstances of my birth or whatever. She's like, it basically, it's just like to her, there's nothing she can do about it. She doesn't want to talk about it. And then he questions her about the pregnancy test, and she says, I haven't taken it. And then Mitch shows up, and of course, he's not happy. Benny's not happy about him being there, and Mitch is apologizing, and but at the end of the day, I think Mitch is like done apologizing because he's like, whatever, big deal, you're mad. Um, so Candace, she tells Mitch about Benny fighting Derek, and then here comes Benny out the bathroom. He's like, yeah, and his punk ass wouldn't even fight back. So Benny was just really proud of himself. And and Mitch tells him you need to respect your mother and your sister. That's your mother and there's your sister. You have to respect them not wanting you, fighting and getting in this. And Benny is just like as usual, he's just salty and rude and he's Mitch has gone to bat for him more than, a friend usually does, so he should be a little more, respectful to Mitch. And Mitch only lied to him because Candace asked him to, like, back him off of Derek and all that. So Benny didn't end up getting hurt. So, when Benny went in there to take a shower and Mitch was showing Candace some concern and all of that, and so that was that. So over at the hospital, and I wasn't that much interested in this scene. It was Wyatt and a doctor, and he tells the doctor I was scratched by a bear, and being smart, obviously, and he's talking about I need pain meds, and the doctor says I know you're an addict. And she asks him, do you have any remorse about shooting your father? And turns out she's a therapist, and of course, he does not want to talk to her. So she tells him, well, you don't have a choice but to talk to me. And he's like, damn. After she leaves the room, he said, damn. So here we go with the real estate agent or the broker. Yeah. And here comes Sandy. And he is just completely a stalker. She's moved. She's changed jobs multiple times, but he keeps finding her and he won't accept that they're over. She says, we are done. We are over. And he's like, no, we're just taking a break. And her supervisor comes in and she's like, are you okay? And of course, he doesn't like, Sandy doesn't like that. And he's like, bitch, why are you in here? Why are you in this? And so she finally goes on out of the room and Sandy just threatens her, He's like, I love you to death if I have to. Um, he's just nuts, and I guess when they were together, he spent all that money on her, and she's like, I'll pay you back, and he's like, I don't want money, and so clearly she made a mistake getting involved with this guy. I mean, why would you get involved with a member of the mob? I mean, maybe she didn't know that initially, but obviously she's made a mistake because Sandy is sick. And, basically Vinny was encouraging him to do this because you remember in a previous episode, Vinny was telling him, what are you going to do about your girl? So anyway, he leaves, and then her supervisor tells her, I told you the last time that he came in here, the other agents were going to get restless. If he comes here again, I'm going to have to send you to work from home. So that was that. So over at the jail, Marty tells Catherine, I couldn't get you bail. And she's like, you're fired. I'm going to find somebody who can get me bail. She wants to hire Veronica. Marty tells her, well, the DA might call her as a witness. And she's like, shoot. And Marty says, give me a chance. Give me another day to talk to another judge, see if I can get you bail. And she's like, you have one day. And Catherine just acts like she really did nothing. She's just acting like I didn't do it. I didn't, just I didn't do it as I didn't kill Jennifer Salas, and she's like, like she believes her own lie. Um, and so over at Veronica's house, the mercenary he shows up and he says, "You're still being followed." And she asks him, "Well, do they recognize me when I'm getting in and out of my car?" And he's like, "Yeah, you're you're pretty recognizable or unmistakable." And clearly she was asking that because she's trying to set Laura up to get killed in her place. And she had also asked him for information about Colby. He had that information, said he's an escort. And then after that, she wanted information about Tanner, Justin's brother. And of course, she had to flirt with the mercenary and all of that. And yeah, Veronica. So over at Catherine's house, the police arrived because that's right, because they called Jim and David called the police, and Hannah was not backing down. She didn't tell that she had Catherine's power of attorney and and that she's in control of Catherine's affairs. She didn't give that up. Um, and so she ends up mocking Jim for being shot by Wyatt, and that got to him. You could see that got to him because he was trying to, he was saying things about Benny and all of that, and he had already threatened to kill, he threatened to kill Benny and Candace. And so the police officer gets there, and she's trying to arrest Hannah for assault. And she's like, "Well, did he tell you that he put his hands on me first?" And she's like, "Oh, really?" And the police officer, she was ready to believe David because he's a judge. Oh, well, he's a judge, obviously he must be telling the truth. And I'm like, that isn't always the case. And so the police officer, she's like, "Well, you need to give them these files. You need to give them over if that's their property." Because Jim's like, "Oh, this is my property." And again, it's Catherine's property. Those are her affairs and all of that. And Hannah lets it out. Finally, she tells the police officer, "I am the executor of this estate." She shows her the papers. Everything is signed, legit, all of that. And she looks at Jim and says, "What were you saying? What were you saying to be me, Jim, about what I have and I have not?" And that gave me a laugh because it was like an allusion to the title of the show, and it's like, okay, it's pretty much like, you can see that this show is coming full circle. So um I think that's kind of an indicator that is wrapping up. We're not sure if this is the last season, but I think that was kind of an indicator that it is wrapping up. So that was the haves and the have nots. So tell me what you think. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you the next time. Bye.